Welcome to meeting number 45 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Aujourd'hui, on considère le budget.
Today, we are considering Supplementary Estimates B, and we welcome the Minister of Northern Affairs and his officials first. He will be followed during the second hour by the Minister of Crown, Indigenous Relations, and his respective officials.
Remarks. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. Vous avez le choix de langue entre le plancher.
You have a choice of language between floor, English, and French, and there may be questions in Inuktitut, so please choose your preferred language, or the language you would like to hear now.
Through the chair. And for members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will try to respect the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. So with that, I would like to welcome the Minister of Northern Affairs, Minister Vandal, to you and to your team. You will have 5 minutes for your introductory remarks, and this will be followed by a question period. So over to you, Minister Vandal.
If I may, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mrs. Gill. I'd raised my hand about the sound tests. So I just want to make sure that the sound tests were done for everyone online.
Completed the sound tests for those who are on Zoom?
No, I didn't. We were waiting for the bells. I apologize, sir. Mr. Walsh, can you hear me? We'll do a quick sound check.
Yeah, I can hear you. No, thank you.
And can I get the thumbs up from the interpreter? I think, Mr. Walsh, can you tell me what the weather is like where you are?
It's about 5 degrees, and the sun is going down quickly as it is at this time of the year.
I think we can hear you just fine. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Sorry, Mr. Chair, for that.
Thank you. Minister Vandal, if you are ready, you will have 5 minutes to make your introductory remarks. So please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, Mr. Chairperson. I'm glad to be here today to discuss and to answer questions on the 2022-23 Supplementary Estimates B for Northern Affairs. Joining me today is Paul Isaac, Associate Deputy Minister of CERNAC, Georgina Lloyd, Assistant Deputy Minister of Northern Affairs, as well as Darlene Best, Chief Finances, Results and Delivery Officer. CERNAC's final supplementary estimates for 22-23 reflect a net increase of $6.3 billion, and of that, $130.8 million is for Northern Affairs. Mon ministère continue à travailler à un certain.
My department continues to work on a number of priorities together with Indigenous, territorial, and Northern partners. One of the most pressing and a significant part of these supplementary estimates is addressing food insecurity across the North and Arctic, because everyone deserves access to affordable and healthy food, no matter where they live. Much has been said about Nutrition North over the past few weeks and months, and I'd like to be clear, no one government program will address food insecurity on its own, which is why we are taking a whole-of-government approach. New funding for Northern Affairs includes $87.5 million for Northern food security, which was allocated through Budget 2021 and will allow the Nutrition North Canada Grant and Contribution Program to better support local food systems in communities across the North and Arctic.
We've also broadened the Harvester Support Grant with additional funding for the new Community Food Programs Fund to support food sharing activities that include market, country, and locally grown foods. Together, the Harvesters Support Grant and Community Programs Fund mark a fundamental shift by empowering communities to determine their own food security priorities. These new measures were co-developed in full partnership and reflect the priorities of Northerners. En ce qui concerne les changements climatiques et l'énergie.
With respect to climate change and cleaner energy, communities in the Northern Arctic are seeing the effects of climate change at a much higher and drastic rate than in the rest of Canada. It's impacting traditional way of life, infrastructure, and more. These estimates also include $5.5 million to support flood mapping in First Nation communities and to identify adaptation options.
Communities have no choice but to rely on costly and polluting diesel to light and heat their homes. The estimates also include $6.2 million of reprofile contribution funding for clean energy projects in the North, allowing by the North for the North solutions in the transition to clean energy and to reduce reliance on diesel. The two streams consist of $2.2 million for clean energy, community clean energy, and $4 million to support planning and feasibility for hydroelectric and grid interconnection projects in the North. Just last month, I traveled to Rankin Inlet and to Iqaluit to announce our government's support for feasibility and planning of the Kivalliq Hydro Fiber Link project. We invested $7 million there, and the Iqaluit Hydroelectricity project, where we invested $4 million. These important projects aims to get Rankin Inlet and Iqaluit off diesel and onto cleaner, more reliable energy. Dans le cadre de nos efforts pour
As part of our efforts to clean up our environment, there's also $1 million in new funding to begin collecting data to address plastic pollution in northern environments. There is also $28.5 million being brought forward from the previous year for the Northern Abandoned Mine Reclamation Program to advance plant remediation activities in 2022-23. This reprofile will support the reduction of risk to human health and the environment and will ensure that affected communities see the social and economic benefits of these cleanups.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to appear before you today and provide a summary of how these estimates will support Northern Affairs. It's great to be here. Kuyanamik, merci.
Merci beaucoup, Ministre Van.
Thank you very much, Minister Vandel. We will now begin the question period.
Conservatives, I've got Mr. Zimmer down here for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Minister for appearing today. I have an article in front of me from the Nunatsiaq News about housing in Nunavut, or more specifically, the lack of housing in Nunavut. I was up recently, as you probably know, Minister, and what I heard was there was an urgent need for many houses in the thousands are required, and yet maybe I'll ask it this way, because maybe you've seen them built where I haven't. How many houses and how much housing has been built in Nunavut this last year?
Thank you for that. And I have to say, since being Minister of Northern Affairs, this is the issue that comes up most often in all my communications, my consultations, both real and virtual. I do know that this is a priority for our government. We have several funding sources for housing. We have, of course, the National Housing Policy, which is a $70 billion policy over 10 years.
And sorry to interrupt you, Minister. I'll just, and I know about all the promises, and you've made another commitment just recently. But the question was, how many houses were built?
CERNAC has also, in Budget 22, we've established $4.4 billion over 5 years, including $800 million to be invested in Inuit
I'm sorry
Nunangat
to
alone.
interrupt you,
I
Minister.
was up in Joe
And
Haven.
I just wanted to say, so the question was how many, and the answer is 0.
That's not true. That's absolutely not
So
true.
how many-
I was in Joe Haven in
How
July.
many were built? That's a
I don't
question
have
I'm
a
trying to get
precise
to.
number of how many were built, but I can tell you there's construction going on as we speak. There's a lot of work to do because the deficits were huge, and we are slowly
So-
chipping away at those deficits.
So, Minister,
and much more work
the
needs
article,
to be done. But I can tell you,
the article, just
I was in
Mr.
Joe
Mike,
Haven.
I know my time is very limited.
Of course.
So I'll quote the article in front of me, the one that I was referring to. Rising construction costs have canceled or delayed critical infrastructure projects across Nunavut, the territory's Legislative Assembly heard Wednesday. And we heard that all housing projects had been canceled this summer because of the increasing costs due to inflation. And so that's the question, and I wanted to get to why they were canceled, but and maybe I'll ask you, why were they all canceled?
Well, first of all, if you let me finish, can I answer?
My time is limited, Minister.
My
I'm
time is
asking for a
limited as
simple
well.
question
That's
of
why
how
I want to
many.
give you an answer. I was in Joe Haven in late July of this year, and there was two fiveplexes in Joe Haven that were near completion. They were not canceled. They were being near completed. That was going to be 10 homes for families, safe, affordable, for a relatively small community of Joe Haven. That's a real project. That's positive. There is much more work to do. We completely acknowledge that. We are in conversations with the Premier of Nunavut on
I have a
accelerating.
question, and I'd like to have a longer conversation, but time just doesn't allow
Of course.
today. So the next question is about the Arctic oil and gas moratorium, as you know. And as many Northerners knew, is that as soon as the Liberal government took power, and this Prime Minister, although the territorial premiers all wanted to have a say, not necessarily that they wanted to develop oil and gas or not, but the Prime Minister said there's a moratorium along the entire 3 territories without consultation from any of the premiers. So my question is, can you provide an update on the Arctic oil and gas moratorium? And is there going to be a change? We've seen certain extensions happen. Is it going to be for the foreseeable future? Or at what point are you going to hand over those decisions to be made by the territories themselves?
First of all, establishing an indefinite moratorium for new Arctic offshore oil and gas in federal waters was the right thing to do. We have been working on 5-year science-based reviews that focus on marine and climate change science in the Arctic offshore, and they are continuing, and they will inform next steps of the Arctic oil and gas development. We are in constant communication with Inuit rights holders as well as all 3 territorial governments on the moratorium, and we are working on an accord that will focus on shared priorities as well as green alternatives for
the decision
energy.
to continue the moratorium, that's going to be indefinite? Is that what you just said?
We're going to be as always, we are basing our future decisions on science.
So it's not going to be a decision that was, I think the promise was that the decisions were going to be given to the territories to make themselves. But I'll move on. My last question is about home heating. So Northern families are worried about how they're going to get through this winter. Some families could be paying more than $7,000 this year just to heat their homes. A single mother that we've been in touch with, working in 2 jobs in the Yukon, was recently hit with an $1,800 fuel bill to fill her tank to start the winter. And that tank will have to be filled 3 more times before the winter's done. And, this is why we asked the Prime Minister in question period about removing the carbon tax on home heating. And all we get back is that it's a luxury and that it needs to be taxed. I know, Minister, that I think you know that heating your home and staying warm this winter is certainly not a luxury to Northerners. And we're seeing families have to literally make the decision between either turning the thermostat up to stay warm or buy food. What's your response to the removal of carbon tax on home heating?
We are totally, first of all, we are totally aware of the realities of Canadians and specifically Northerners. It's important to note, as your party seems to not realize, the price on pollution does not cost Canadians anything. They are rebated the cost of the price on pollution in every territory.
I think, Minister, it's been proven that
in every country.
Mr. Zimmer, your time
province.
is up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, let the minister finish to answer the question, and then we'll move on.
We are completely aware of the affordability issues all across our country. I'm happy to say that that's why we brought in $10 a day daycare, and I'm happy to say that Nunavut was the very first territory or province as per December 1 that has reached the $10 a day daycare goal. That's going to save Nunavut families thousands of dollars over the next year. That's why we brought it in. We brought in dental care for all Canadians. There's over 60,000 applications for help with dental care. That's going to help people all over the country, as well as we index the benefit to inflation. That's something that's putting literally thousands of dollars in the pockets of Nunavut families, and that's something, all three initiatives that your party voted against.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Zimmer?
Yeah, the reason I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is that the minister's referred to the amount of houses that were built, and he has a documentation, I think, to show that. I think he's claiming. I just would ask that he would table that for the committee and us to study, because from my records, zero have been built. So I'd like him to table that and at least inform us where those are being built and how many. Thank you.
Could I respond to that?
Yes, please.
I answered that question. I didn't have a precise number on how many homes were built. I'm sure the public service could find you something in the days that come, but I don't have it.
So thank you, Minister. I will ask if your ministry could provide that information to the committee, please. Thank you. And with that, we'll go to Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the Minister and his team. I'm listening to the housing discussion with a lot of interest, because it's still a big issue in the north and all across the Arctic. And I'm very happy with the investments that we've been seeing from our government in the last number of budgets. In my previous life, I was the Minister of Housing for the government in Northwest Territories, and it was very difficult to access federal funding for housing. We did get a couple $1 million from the government of the day, the Conservative government, but we got absolutely no Indigenous housing money, not a penny. And it hasn't been until this government got into power that we were able to start the money flowing from Indigenous services into the Northwest Territories for Indigenous housing. And now we have rapid housing money flowing, co-investment funding, affordable housing, homelessness, and on top of that, the stream from Indigenous services. So I'm quite excited about that. Maybe you could, I'll give you the opportunity to give us an update on the progress made and some of the work that has happened with the territorial governments and Indigenous partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, MP McLeod. What can I listen, this is, we fully understand. First of all, I've already said that this is a priority in all the conversations I've had. We fully understand the importance of it. And we're also realistic as to the limitations of constructing in the territories where the seasons are short, where at the best of times the cost of doing anything in the north is elevated, especially during these difficult times with inflation. We're cognizant of that. Nevertheless, it's a priority. Every premier that I have conversations with across the territories are working. We're working with them to put forward accelerated housing plans. We're doing it with Inuits, rights holders, First Nations, and Métis communities. And I think there's progress being made. I mean, you could see it in your own territory. Last time I was in Yellowknife, you could see the construction ongoing and the dollars that were in the queue that are because of the short construction season and the supply chain issues. There's difficulty in actually keeping up construction with the investment, with the dollars that are allocated. I know that I've talked about my travels. I went on a 10 region tour over 12 days over the summer. I saw 2 5-unit construction in Johaven, which I've mentioned. I saw 14-unit construction being almost finished in Inuvik. In Yellowknife, where I've met you many times, there's got to be dozens and dozens of new constructions that are underway now, and I can tell you that in Nunavut, we are working with housing corporations, with the government, to accelerate 300 homes by many homes by 2030. The Premier's been very creative in his partnerships and his funding. And it's reflected in the budgets. Budget 2022 is investing $4 billion to accelerate work in closing Indigenous housing gaps, including $2.4 billion for First Nations housing, $565 million to support housing in First Nations self-governing and modern treaty holders communities, $845 million to support housing in Inuit communities, $190 million for Métis communities, and $34 million to 4 Métis groups in the Northwest Territories. So I can say that progress is being made. It's not fast enough. It's too slow. We acknowledge that. The gaps are the size, are as long as this room, as wide as this room, but we're slowly chipping away at it. What we need to do is continue investing for many, many more years to come, and that is certainly our plan.
Yeah, it's quite exciting to see the number of units. I live in a small Indigenous communities, and I know there's at least 14 units hitting the ground, 7 of them being retrofitted and 7 brand new ones coming up. And that's just a small community. So there's a lot of excitement. It's good to see that every Indigenous government has received a funding commitment for housing in the Northwest Territories, and I'm very happy with that. I do want to ask you a quick question on some of the devastating impacts of climate change. You know, we're seeing communities flooded. We're seeing communities kind of starting to fall into the ocean or the rivers because their banks are starting to erode. We really need to do lots to mitigate some of the impacts. Maybe you could talk about what's being done, what's being planned in terms of trying to mitigate some of the damage that climate change is impacting our community, and how do we build a better environmental future in the North?
That's a great question. It's absolutely a priority for our government. Everyone acknowledges that the climate is warming faster in the North than in the South. We have in our budget hundreds of $millions for co-development of an Indigenous climate leadership agenda. We are moving forward on hydroelectric projects such as the Iqaluit hydro project, the Kivalliq hydro fiber project in the Kivalliq area. There's the Taltson hydroelectric project in your territory, where we're having great discussions with the Premier. And Budget 22 invested $32.5 million for the Atlin hydro project, which is led by First Nation led in Yukon. So those are all real projects that we are working on to lessen the reliance, Northerners' reliance on diesel. They're ambitious projects. They take time, but we are making the right moves to see them come to fruition.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod. Nous irons maintenant Madame Gill pour.
Mrs. Gill, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I didn't hear my name. I'd like to thank Minister Vandal for testifying. I'd also like to thank his team members. I listened to Minister Vandal when he talked about food insecurity in the north. I hear about this issue wherever I go. This insecurity, this food insecurity, it is tied to climate change and resulting impacts. He also talked about the whole of government initiatives. What was he referring to exactly? We know that food insecurity is not something entirely under the purview of his department, so I'd like to know more about other programs that will help us with our study of the supplementary estimates. Thank you very much for your important question. I can tell you that this is something we take seriously. We have programs in our department, Nutrition North, but I know that the Department of Agriculture has initiatives with respect to food security. That is, these initiatives are important. Minister Keeble, but what percentage are we talking about here? You're talking about this $87 million investment to develop this initiative on food security, but what can the Department of Agriculture do? The Department of Agriculture is not connected to the Nutrition North program, but I know that there are other initiatives underway, but Minister, sometimes we have partnerships in the north and in the west that can benefit programs. I don't have a lot of details about this department because I'm not really tied to this department, but certainly we can connect once this meeting is over to ensure that you obtain more information. That's what really interests me. You said that this was a whole of government approach. Other departments are involved. So I'm wondering, how are the other departments working to supplement these programs, such as Nutrition North? I was wondering how you evaluate the needs, since if you don't know what the other departments are doing. We see this amount here in the budget, but we don't know what's being spent elsewhere. We need to know whether this is satisfactory or not, whether it meets the needs. The whole issue of food security is a question of, or food insecurity is a question of poverty. Our government has many programs to help all Canadians, including our citizens in the north. I already mentioned the early childhood programs. Nunavut was the first territory amongst all of the territories and provinces to sign on to this program with $10 a day. Well, Quebec did this quite a number of years ago, Minister. We also have dental care. Well, I don't see the connection with food security. Out of this $87.5 million, this is to expand the program. Can you give us some examples of where this money is being allocated? And this is I also have another question. I'm trying to run through them quickly, but we know that there's a lot of inflation. Cost of living is going up. it costs a lot of money to feed people in the north, and a lot of people have trouble getting proper food. How will this money help these people? You're talking about the money in my budget? Yes, of course. Because you said that you expanded the funds allocated to nutrition in the north. Okay, yes, I can answer your question. This new money will go beyond the grant given to Nutrition North. This is a new fund for community nutrition to support the activities in the community, such as school programs before school begins, breakfast programs, lunch programs in the schools, greenhouse initiatives. We visited several greenhouses in the Northwest Territories, and this money is going directly to our Indigenous partners to help harvesters and hunters. Thank you very much, Ms. Gill.
Merci, Madame Gill.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Pardon me. I lost temporary contact, but you have gone beyond your 6 minutes, just as everyone else has done this evening, so you're not alone. So on that note, we will now turn to Mrs. Iglau for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chairperson. Also, thank you for giving us an update on the budget items. I regret, and I'm sorry to hear, that it's going to be a very long process with housing, and very little will be done or completed. The people I represent have told me many times that people in Teloljuak, in Kitilmeot region, in the middle of winter, there are some people who are homeless at the moment in the middle of winter. And in Kurauk, the housing association there has informed me that there's a pregnant woman, a young woman, who is homeless. The young woman who was pregnant committed suicide due to homelessness in the middle of winter. She was totally homeless. How long must we wait? In Alviat, people who live in one house are so many, are so numerous. They arrange their sleeping times in each room and each house by day and by night. I hear your updates. Those are the stories I hear from the people I represent, who tell it to me personally. People commit suicide. They have no shelter to go to in the case of domestic violence. If they want to flee an abusive situation, they cannot go to their family because they're overcrowded already. Why is it so long that the budget is so slow in being increased? Why is it so slow that you cannot produce more budgets and financial resources for housing?
That question, and I don't disagree with you. I wish that I wish we had invested, and when I say we, I mean previous governments, and of all stripes, including some of our own governments, did not invest what they should have in the north on infrastructure.
I asked you previously, again, I asked you, why is it that it's not a rush or a priority or an emergency to you right now? You should look at this as a crisis situation and do something quickly about it. Why are you not asking us to support you with supplementary funding for housing? Yes, we read the report that you read to us. We heard the report. Many of us see the importance of adding more resources financially. Why aren't you pleading with us to support you to produce more resources, to produce more housing?
We are moving, we are investing dollars to the north as quickly as we possibly can. And in fact, I dare say we are investing it, we are moving it probably quicker than it can be absorbed by the local communities. I can tell you that since 2016, Inuit have constructed nearly 500 new units, repaired a number of existing units, and have undertaken.
Again, I regret.
That is progress, but it's not enough. I am agreeing with you. We need to do more, and we need to build capacity at the community level, at the territorial level. You know better than I about the limitations, the short construction season, the supply chain problems, the inflation. But we are working. We are working with the Premier. We are working with rights holders. We are working with housing corporations to try to reduce the barriers and try to accelerate the construction. The only way this is going to get done is through partnerships. I was very happy to learn last week, I believe, that in Arviat there is a modular housing plant that's being planned. I think that's great news. I worked with the former Premier on that when I was in Arviat. That's ultimately the answer, is to build the capacity and the production ability in Nunavut itself and in other territories, so that the homes can be built there and the skills can be learned. It breaks my heart when I hear about homelessness and people dying in the cold weather, and I know I speak for everybody. But we are trying to do better. But we are making small progress to it.
I regret. Listen, you did not respond to my questions.
Another little chance. We're going to a second round now, and we'll start with Mr. Melillo, I believe, for 5 minutes.
For being here to answer our questions on this. I want to go back to food security. Minister, I believe it was $87.3 million that has been allocated to support northern food security, and a concern I have with the government's approach is that from all the information I can find over the last number of years, each year funding has increased to address food security, such as programs such as Nutrition North, but each year in my riding, and the north parts of my riding, and across of course the three territories, we see rates of food insecurity continuing to increase. So the department is continuing to spend more and not necessarily getting more results from that. I'm just wondering if you can tell us, what more the government is doing and your department is doing in terms of working with communities on the ground to ensure that those dollars spent are actually achieving their targets.
We are working with people that live in all of the various communities, so that we know that solutions from the north are better than solutions from Ottawa. We've invested $163 million of new money in food security initiatives in the north, including a subsidy increase to Nutrition North, including a new community foods program that's going to work on school programs, other food sovereignty initiatives, such as greenhouses, such as year-round hydroponic enclosures, which I visited in my travels, and as well as the Hunter and Trappers program, where we encourage and financially help country food, traditional foods that Indigenous peoples helped us co-develop. But ultimately,
can I just ask a quick question? Sorry, I know,
Sure.
I'm pressed for time, Minister. I appreciate that. You mentioned earlier on a bit about the consultation as well on that. Do you have any information or that you could provide us around how frequently communities in the north are consulted on those programs?
Well, we have a Nutrition North Advisory Council. We work whose job is to represent the various communities. The North, as you know better than I, is a vast area. So we try to get representation from most of those areas on the Advisory Council of Nutrition North. We work directly with Indigenous
thank you, Minister.
nations.
Sorry, I just want to get to another question. I want to emphasize that you said I know the North better than you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that shout out. Minister, in June of 2021, this committee completed a report on food security in the North, and one of the concerns we heard around Nutrition North is that the mandate wasn't really to make life more affordable in the program. And one of the recommendations, the third recommendation from that report, is that the program's mandate be changed in order to better improve food security outcomes in northern communities. And I'm wondering if your department has taken that action to change the mandate.
We're constantly consulting with the advisory council as well as the many various Indigenous governments in the North on improvement. We have some funds available for actually data and research.
Has the mandate been changed? Does the committee, the all-party committee,
the mandate's been expanded? I've talked about the new community foods group that we now have to encourage food sovereignty initiatives from people who live in the North.
And is it explicitly within the mandate of Nutrition North to alleviate food insecurity, to make life more affordable for people in the North?
It's the mandate of our government to alleviate poverty, which is a direct cause of food security.
And is it directly in the mandate of Nutrition North? I understand the government's working on it. That's great.
Yes, I would think. I haven't read,
You don't know the mandate of the program that you're in charge of?
Of Nutrition North, but it's to alleviate food security.
You haven't read the mandate of the Nutrition North program? Is that correct? Is that what you just said?
The purpose of Nutrition North is to alleviate food security.
Okay, and that's explicitly in the mandate? Can you confirm
The
that?
mandate of Nutrition North is to alleviate food insecurity.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion. I think it would have been easier if you said that on
I wasn't confused. You were confused.
On the get-go there, Minister. So I think that's, I had 5 minutes, Mr. Chair. I think that's pretty much my time. I don't know if the chair is still with us.
There's about 10 seconds left,
10 seconds,
Mr. Melillo.
I don't think I can get much of an answer in 10 seconds, so thank you, Minister,
Or a question.
for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Melillo. We'll go on to Mr. McLeod for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm listening with this very, very keen interest on the discussion, because there's a lot of focus on supplementary in the estimates on what the department is doing to address food insecurity. And this is an issue that's been around for a long time. And it's good to hear that, there's new options out there, and there's new investments for greenhouses and hunters and trappers and, an expanded program. But I think it's going to take more than just one government to be able to deal with the insecurity, the food insecurity. And it's also going to take more than just addressing some of these programs through Nutrition North. It's going to take a whole of government approach. I've been saying this for a long time, and I know you've heard me say it before, but the ability to have roads to our community would eliminate the need for Nutrition North in a lot of our communities. And we have quite a few communities that don't have roads yet. All the communities along the Mackenzie Valley Highway are not accessible by roads, and many of them are only able to get freight by plane. And even then, because some of our runways are not long enough, the plane can only land with half a load. And that's the same with passengers too, by the way. Takeoff and landing and takeoff restrictions really impact us in the north. So as we talk about food insecurity, cost of living, transportation infrastructure is a big part of it. So I wanted to ask you if you could explain how the government's approaching dealing with the cost of living in our small communities, how we're dealing with the investment to build better accessibility into the small communities. I saw the road being built. We had the investment for the road to Wati. That is a game changer for that community. People can get out of the community. They can go into the larger regional centers. They can be back that same evening. The cost of living has gone down. But the other communities where you can't get out, you only have 6 weeks sometimes to go get a new fridge or a new larger piece of merchandise is very challenging. So I'll give you some time to respond.
Thank you for that question. It's a very important one, and it's really at the heart of really what we're trying to do is we've talked a lot about housing. Infrastructure is the same thing. I think we need to invest more dollars with territorial governments on things like road construction, we do have budgetary items. We have the Northern Transportation Initiatives that have funding envelopes that are application based for the different communities to apply for transportation corridor funding. I know that's something that has shown some benefit in the past. We need to do more of it to make sure that that more communities have road access for transportation. You're absolutely right. It would be a great benefit to affordability issues, to food security issues. The road to Wate, I agree with you, was something that was a game changer, and I'm glad that we were able to partner to actually to get that done. That's something that's front and center in our platform, and it's a constant part of our communications, consultations with territories, because we can't do it alone. Territories need to be driving this. They're the representation of the people who live there, along with Indigenous governments, and we are absolutely committed to continuing the investment. We've made some progress, but there's a long way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My last question is regarding.
And Mr. MacLeod, you have about 30 seconds for the question and answer.
Okay, I'll just ask the minister if he could speak a little bit about how the Canadore is benefiting the North, and especially what it's done during the pandemic.
Oh, I think we know that Canadore has been invaluable during the pandemic. It's been the agency that has provided relief for not only individuals but also businesses. And during those very difficult 2 years that we all went through, unprecedented, but is now playing a very significant part in the recovery by partnering, by having ears on the ground, and by investing in businesses to grow their businesses and create jobs.
Thank you, Mr. MacLeod. We'll now go to Madame Gill for 2 minutes et demie.
Mrs. Gill, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, to continue along the same line regarding the money allocated to reduce food insecurity, I'd like to go back to this idea of working as a whole of government. Is there a structure in place or that was pre-existing to ensure that several departments can work together in coming up with a plan? and this is obviously a multi-year plan. Are there any formal discussions between various departments to resolve this problem, which must require a plan? Yes, it is certainly a priority for our government. I work closely with the Crown ministers, with the Minister Crown Indigenous Relations. How can we
Je m'excuse, Monsieur le Président.
Excusez.
Please continue. Good. We both want to speak, and we both want answers. I'd like to know if there is some type of formal structure that exists where various departments can sit down to prepare a plan in order to alleviate food insecurity. You said that you had taken a whole-of-government approach. Things can't be left to chance. Is there any type of existing structure to resolve this issue? Thank you. We work closely with the Department of Agriculture and other departments, such as transport, infrastructure, to deal with these shortcomings, to deal with food insecurity. There's a lot of communication between the teams.
Ça existe.
Yes, we have an Inuit Crown Committee that deals with all kinds of challenges, including food insecurity. So you don't have a complete plan. Thank you, Madam Gill. Mrs. Idlout, you have 2.5 minutes to.
Thank you. What you reported about Inuit housing. When I was in Iqaluit, I was informed that there was a meeting on housing, and I was told at that meeting and conference that the houses slated for Inuit had to be divided for all of Canada. Those that have been designated for Inuit in 2016 and 2018, they did not have anything slated for the territory of Nunavut. I wish to remind you to remember Nunavut. I don't have enough time. I have many other concerns. In Nunavut, we have many concerns that the elders do not want to leave their homeland. They want to live in their own homeland. They are sent from their homeland for elder care. You said you committed some money towards elder facilities in Nunavut. Can you elaborate on the Nunavut infrastructure that you have committed, that you are slating for Inuit elders in Nunavut? Please elaborate.
Thank you. Thank you for that very important question. Just quick note on the housing. Budget 2022 is investing $845 million to support housing in Inuit Nunangat. We work closely with Inuit rights holders, with the government of Nunavut, to roll out that money, but this is money that is the final decisions on where it's invested is with the rights holders. That's important. That's never been done before in our relationship. On the was it seniors support housing?
Long-term care.
Long-term care, very important issue that comes up regularly with the government of Nunavut, and we are working in good faith with them to try to deliver better services and long-term care and health care generally. But I know that has been a priority, and our governments are working together.
Nutrition.
Regarding Nutrition North, a quick question. I've asked many times, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of Nutrition North? The retail outlets are given millions in refund. It's a retail outlets that are getting the refunds, and very little is going to the consumer. How do you evaluate how it will affect the consumer rather than the retail outlet?
To us that the food that is subsidized by Nutrition North is more affordable because of the subsidies it receives. We also we have a Nutrition North advisory committee that advises us on policies, and there have been audits done over the past few years on the programs as they have been implemented. Those audits are shared with territorial leaders, with Inuit rights holders, and we think that there is room for improvement. That's why we are always consulting and have an open mind to making improvements that make sense and are proven by data and by research that they will improve the program.
Thank you, Ms. Edelhout. With that, panel one comes to a close. I would like to thank Minister Valdal and his team for appearing before our committee today to answer questions on supplementary estimates B. We very much appreciate that. And with that, we will briefly suspend as we prepare for the second panel. Welcome to Minister Miller and to your team for appearing before us in the context of Supplementary Estimates B. The usual process is that we will provide 5 minutes for your introductory remarks, followed by questions. I would remind all committee members that we're expecting bells at 5:30. Which means we would normally adjourn at that point unless there is a request and unanimous for extension beyond that point. With that said, I will now invite Minister Miller to make his introductory remarks for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Kwekwe Ulukut. Tansei, hello. Bonjour. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous donner un aperçu des investissements.
Today, I'm going to give you an overview of the investments that we're making to address issues. We work with all communities to do this. In addition, we will continue to work with other government departments to implement investments that address the root causes of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2SL LGBTQQ1A+ people. Soon we will begin the engagement process with First Nation partners on redesigning the additions to reserve policy to ensure it's effective and inclusive. We're also working with First Nations to modernize the First Nations Fiscal Management Act and are working closely with First Nations fiscal institutions and Indigenous governments that have concluded comprehensive and self-government agreements to ensure they have sufficient resources to further their visions for self-determinations.
Includes initiatives totaling $6.3 billion, which will bring the total budgetary funding for the department to approximately $13.7 billion. Roughly half of the estimates, $2.9 billion, is funding for out-of-court settlements. These funds are used to advance reconciliation by paving a way for more respectful and constructive relationships with Indigenous peoples. These estimates also include $673 million in new funding for the continued management of the Indigenous childhood claims litigation, further supporting the compensation of survivors of physical and sexual abuse under the Day School Settlement Agreement, as well as related administration costs for the Day Schools and 60 Scoop settlement agreements. As of November 2nd of this year, over 118,000 class action members have received compensation for the harms they suffered attending a day school, as well as 20,798 class action members having been deemed eligible for compensation of the harms that they suffered related to the 60 Scoop. Additionally, the top-up of $678 million in new funding in this fiscal year for the specific claims settlement fund ensures that funds are available for the timely payment of settlement agreements reached through the negotiations with First Nations or any compensation awards that are made by the specific claims tribunals. En complémentarité avec nos efforts continus.
In parallel to our ongoing efforts to work with First Nations to resolve their claims expeditiously, I'm pleased to note that through a court, we are working with the Assembly of First Nations and other Indigenous partners or reforms to improve the specific claims process. In addition, we are using this investment to help address the critical housing needs of Indigenous partners and support better health and socioeconomics overall.
$1 million was provided through Budget 2022 to improve and expand Indigenous housing and infrastructure for self-governing and modern treaty First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. This funding extends and enhances the distinctions-based housing strategy of work that's already underway, such as the Métis Nation and Inuit Nunangat housing strategies. This investment helps to address the critical housing needs of Indigenous partners and support better health and socioeconomic outcomes overall. Monsieur le Président, les fonds inclus dans le budget.
Mr. Chair, the funding included in the Supplementary Estimates B will further support the department as we work to deliver on our mandate and priorities.
To discuss these estimates with the committee and happy now to proceed to questions. Impatient de prendre vos réponses, cher comité. Miigwech Kinamik. Merci. Thank you. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. We will now begin with the question period, beginning with the Conservatives, either Mr. Schmale or Mr. Zimmer. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister for appearing. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Minister, a few hours ago, the AFN came out against Bill C-21. Will you be supporting the AFN's call for amendments to be made?
Well, first and foremost, I think we can acknowledge that that is entirely within their discretion to come out with that type of resolution. Clearly, we've heard from partners. I have heard from partners about concerns with respect to Bill 21 as early as today, but yesterday, particularly in side conversations that I had at the AFN. That's work that we will do with Indigenous partners. The Prime Minister, Minister Mendocino as well, has signaled that and actually look forward to that engagement. We know that long rifles in particular are used to sustain hunting and practices as well as for food initiatives and sustainability. So that's work that we'll keep doing.
So you'll be advocating for the AFN's position at the Cabinet table?
What I say around the Cabinet table remains private, as you know, MP Schmale, but I do voice the concerns freely and openly as my duty to Indigenous peoples demands that I do.
Okay, Minister, just on a different topic. So looking at the estimates here, almost 93% of executive-level employees in your department received a performance bonus in the 2021-22 fiscal year. It looks like from this this order paper question here, the criteria was based on executive, the individual results for executives rather than the department. Your bonus is based on how well the department performs. But under this criteria, it seems that it's based on the individual. I'm not sure how many organizations work that way. Should it not be on the department's success, not the individual success?
And I'll pass the substantive part of the question over to my Deputy Minister. This is an independent public service. I will, however, defend to the bone the work that my department has done, as well as Indigenous Services Canada, to keep Indigenous people safe through COVID, but I'll let the substantive question be answered by my Deputy Minister.
Thank you for the question. There are two parts to the performance agreements, one of which follows from requirements from the clerk to the entire deputy minister community, then flow down into performance agreements for employees in individual departments. And then, yes, each director, each executive has a set of criteria that they're measured by, that they're required to. I'm responsible for all of those. It's not actually accurate to say that 93% got a bonus. They got performance pay, but the biggest chunk of that every single year is people who are deemed to have met the requirements that were set out for them. So they get the amount that is for meeting your requirements, not necessarily for having exceeded.
But these are personal requirements, not departmental requirements. Is that correct?
Well, they're departmental in the sense that as a deputy minister, I decide ultimately what those are and decide whether or not they have met them in the furtherance of the objects of the department.
So it says here in this order paper question, individual performance pay holds executives accountable for individual results and is not related to departmental results, which measure organizational goals.
So their portion of that they're required to do, I hold them to account for, and they have done that. But as the deputy head, I'm responsible for the performance of the department as a whole. But each of them is responsible for their portion as I assign it to them for the course of the year and the performance over that period of time.
Well, the department is still not meeting its goals. So should we not be shifting that performance criteria?
It does change each and every year depending on the circumstances. So as things are completed, we exchange them. As we find that things need to be repeated, we sort of repeat and amplify those things. But many of the things that we set out to do, we did in fact do. And so that's recognized in there as well. And there are an awful lot of things we set out to do that we in fact accomplished over the year.
Okay, I want to move back to the Minister here because I know my time is short here. Minister, unfortunately, we don't have the Indigenous Services Minister here. It's the third largest department, 10% of overall government spending. It's actually almost doubled in spending in the last year. It's unfortunate she wasn't able to be here. I want to ask you some of the information here in the estimate, specifically around what the Auditor General came out with a few weeks ago regarding funding for mitigation and adaptation, specifically Indigenous-led projects that would help give Indigenous communities a fighting chance to stay on their land in the event of extreme weather occurrences. It says here in the estimates there's about $12 million. Has that been spent? Has any been spent? And are you expecting more than just $12 million? Because if you're talking about bridge or ditches, dikes, culverts, that's barely enough to address the problem.
Are you speaking about my estimates or Minister Hajdu's estimates?
I'm speaking about Minister Hajdu's,
okay.
But given the fact
I'm
that
here, so you're
her
asking
numbers
me the
are so
question.
big.
Look, I had the honor of serving that department for 2 years during COVID, deploying extraordinary measures to keep people safe during a particularly difficult time of our history that we're still feeling the effects for. What we've seen through that is that there are massive socioeconomic gaps that need to be closed. So that increase is, in my mind, entirely justified. It's keeping people safe, alive, and in the cases of flooding and fires, we know that Indigenous communities are disproportionately exposed, partly because Canada placed them in swamps, in areas, in flood zones, and has exposed them to it. So we can talk about climate change, which is increasing that vulnerability, but there's a role that Canada played, and we see that in some of the settlements that I have. We've seen that with the flooding of Peguis, for example, just earlier this year. We're not doing enough, and I think Minister Hajdu has acknowledged that. We will have to do even more if we don't start moving into mitigation projects, and clearly they are underfunding. Otherwise, we'll spend the money on the back end like we've seen through the fire seasons.
And I think that's what the Auditor
seasons.
General pointed out. There's 112 infrastructure projects that would deal with adaptation and mitigation that are not being approved. In fact, it's a 1 to 6 savings. You can save $6 for every one invested in adaptation and mitigation. So that again goes to my
thank you, Mr. Schmale.
question.
Unless the minister wants to respond rapidly to what you've just said, the time is up.
We have 16.5 million.
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend to disagree with what perhaps where you were going. I can't presume what the question was, but clearly we need to invest more in mitigation. It is clear as day, and it's only going to get worse if we can't tackle climate change in a mature way.
Thank you, Mr. Schmale. We'll now go to Ms. Atwin for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister and your team for appearing today for this very important discussion. I'd like to acknowledge that last night we had a really important Take Note debate on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in this country. And you know, there's so many issues that we can focus on that can better support Indigenous women and girls. But I think that housing is specifically one that's just so important, and it's a social determinant of health, as we know. And Minister, our government has previously noted that investments in First Nation housing, including self-governing and modern treaty partners, plays a role in closing the infrastructure gap, the socioeconomic gap in Indigenous communities by ensuring their needs are met. Can you please speak to how the government ensures that these projects address the needs of the community and involve them in the process?
Infrastructure projects, as well-meaning as they are, just kind of drop on people, and you know the support and the capacity is in there. What we do is important, as important as how we do it. We know that with respect to missing murdered Indigenous women and girls, the lack of housing is driving people into a precarious position and being vulnerable, and we know it'll continue to do so if we don't tackle it and continue to tackle it through successive budgetary cycles. That includes on-reserve housing that is adapted for women and children that are fleeing violence. That includes more housing generally, and that includes shelters and homes off reserve. We've often tended to silo our action in the quote-unquote on-reserve reality. It hasn't been sufficient, and it certainly hasn't represented what our ultimate responsibility is to keep people safe in this country. And obviously what we've seen over the last few weeks is further evidence that as governments we continue to fail Indigenous women and girls. I was able to see this summer some really great investments by some of the modern treaty holders, specifically targeting housing for women and girls that are fleeing violence in a non-reserve scenario. It's great to see, because it's not just homes that they're building, which is important in and of itself, but homes adapted to people that need that safety and security and wraparound supports. That violence is a legacy of our history in Canada, and it's ongoing. The final report into murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls outlined some substantive steps that we need to keep following as Canadians as the federal government that don't touch around necessarily the single moment where a dramatic tragedy occurs, but all the steps leading up to the point where someone was put in that vulnerable position. And we wish that it could have been solved in the snap of a finger, but we know that it can't. We need to fix the ongoing tragedy of children in care, over-incarceration of Indigenous women. It all ties in to what the report has said, which is we need to approach this in a systemic fashion, or else we will just continue patching tragedy by tragedy. I thank you for your presence last night, MP Atwin. I know this is deep and profound for you, so I know you didn't have to be there, but appreciate your remarks as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that response as well. And you know, another really impactful piece is supporting cultural spaces and revitalization of languages. So we heard from Indigenous partners and communities, or you did as well, that cultural spaces are critical to promoting those Indigenous cultures and identities while fostering safe and secure communities for Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. Can you speak to how investments in cultural spaces help advance the calls for justice and the calls to action?
The Call to Justice 2.3 specifically called on the government to fund infrastructure projects for safe spaces for women and girls and 2S LGBTQI persons. Over the last year or so, we have been able to deploy about $100 million into that infrastructure that covers over 65 projects. The envelope and subscription to that had projects that were, I think it was oversubscribed by a factor of 9. Eligible projects or ineligible projects, depending on the criteria. For the purposes of this response, it's relatively immaterial, but it shows the need to continue to invest in safe spaces. And what does that look like? Well, in some cases, it's a longhouse is in Guasalanacquara, which has some of the most impressive house posts that I've ever seen. I'm an East Coaster, so maybe that isn't as impressive to MP Weiler, who's probably seen a lot more than I have. But what it will do is honor a commitment that we made 50 years ago to the community when it was displaced and never honored. But we know, and the final report underscored the vulnerability of people that are not able to reconnect with their culture, their ways, and their language. And this marvelous project, which will be about, I think, $7 million, will allow communities to build their governance, have a safe space for those that are vulnerable in their community, and ultimately keep them safe. Sadly, I can't guarantee you that had those projects been in place years ago, that they would have kept these people safe. I know they will keep people safe. I am not arrogant to presume that that the 4 women that we were horrified by the discoveries in what is a trash site would have been affected by this. That's not the nature of my answer. We do know that those investments need to occur as well in urban settings to keep people safe, and that needs to continue, and that's work that we'll do across all levels of government.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Atwin. 6 minutes goes by quickly. Alors, maintenant, c'était...
Now, Ms. Gill, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to thank Minister Miller and his team for coming here to answer our questions, of course. You said, Mr. Miller, you talked about urban settings. I'd like to draw your attention to this issue. In meeting with Indigenous communities, we realize that a lot of young people end up moving to the city. They move from the reserve to urban settings for Quebec. I think it represents about 45% or the 50% of the Indigenous people who live in urban areas. I was wondering, I know that you're no longer the Minister of Indigenous Services, but I'd like to know, what is the proportion of the budget that is allocated, that can be allocated to those Indigenous people who live in an urban setting, including all the services they need, such as housing, health services, etc. Thank you. Thank you. And the figures you gave about people moving to the urban settings doesn't surprise me, particularly in certain areas of the country. In Quebec, those figures don't surprise me at all. It's a question of jurisdiction as well. Sometimes when we talk about Quebec, for instance, jurisdiction is fiercely debated, and sometimes it's the Indigenous people who pay the cost for this. Sometimes it's the federal government that doesn't assume its responsibilities. But we see this everywhere throughout the country. You know full well that the investments that traditionally we've invested on the reserve, but in terms of percentages, we're investing more and more in housing, hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, in Val-d'Or, for instance, Montreal. But these are organizations that don't get enough money. Quebec also has to invest. I know that Quebec is doing this, but we need to have a real frank discussion about jurisdictional matters where it's the Indigenous people who pay the cost. And when we talk about these Indigenous services that require recurring financing, you know, I understand the shared jurisdiction issues, but when you get right down to it, would it be possible for the government to deal with their increasing demands? We know that there's a real boom in population. A lot of people are heading towards the cities. The traditional funding, could it be enhanced? Because there's nothing in the SUPs for this. You talked about the current situation. I didn't even talk about inflation, but that has an impact on the entire population, but particularly on Indigenous people. Is there any opening to add to this budget to help these people who live in the urban settings? Indeed. I met the same group as you did today. I'm very familiar with this group. It talked about the wonderful work that it did during COVID to ensure that Indigenous people remain healthy. There's the vaccination program, of course. They have done some exceptional work. These needs are urgent. They're pressing. We're now in a post-COVID era. We have deficits, as we all know. In the parliamentary secretary talked about investments that we're going to make from Halifax. These Indigenous people who choose to live in an urban setting, yes, they need some assistance, but it takes the federal government and the provinces working together. I would like to know, I spoke with Minister Vandal earlier, this whole issue of planning and the whole issue of housing on reserve. And yes, I was told there are steps being taken, but we've added money to the funding, but do we know when we're going to be able to resolve this issue of housing, if in fact it's possible to resolve? We're facing a crisis right now. Do you know, can you assess the amount of money that's been invested into houses? There's a huge shortcoming. is this money allocated on a short-term basis, or is there a long-term planning? Is there long-term planning involved? That's a very relevant question, particularly with respect to the building of infrastructure, and we know the inflation costs that are involved with that. We have recently invested in Nunavik and in the Cree Nation. The Cree Nation recently received $100 million directly for housing. These are investments. Well, this is an historic amount of money being invested, but the problem, we know, we have a lot of activists that are there's always this tension between Indian Affairs and Crown Indigenous relations and activists. It's hard to understand what exactly the deficit is. We have an idea of the sums. This is an amount that is huge, but I'll leave it up to Minister Haiju to provide you with greater details. But every government, regardless of its political stripes, is going to have to work towards this. The challenge is absolutely tremendous. Thank you, Ms. Gill. Now we will go to Ms. Idlout for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you for coming here to give us a presentation. I will ask a very short question regarding money. We are talking about supplementary funding, and we're talking about money going to Nunavut government. What's targeted to Nunavut government? What are they planning to use it for?
And they are going, hopefully, in a productive way. I'm optimistic. Those are conversations that we're having with the Premier NTI and Gwich'in and Dene. I can't speak publicly about where that will be. I didn't know whether your question was more related to housing or.
Sure.
Yeah. In terms of housing, you know the sums that we've invested through the last budget. Over $800 million over 7 years, which will not close that gap in Nunavut or any other of the regions. I know you had the opportunity to speak to Minister Vandal, but we need to keep investing. ITK has had a plan to move forward and close that gap, and the government of Nunavut, as you well know, has recently asked us to speak and move to their plan that they presented to the Prime Minister and me in supporting the government in its role as the territorial government to invest. So it'll take both the rights holders and the government of Nunavut to work together along with the federal government to support those needs in all the communities that are crying. So they have been very responsible in putting together a plan. It's actually admirable, and it's work that we'll have to work through finance to make sure it gets out.
Thank you. Another topic, another question. It's very different from what I've asked you. Last night, we had an emergency debate about Indigenous missing and murdered women and girls. Morgan Harris, the body of Morgan Harris, they have to search for her body. We thought it would be in a Prairie Green landfill. Today we have heard if they would stop all work with the green work while they search for her body. Would you support them to stop and cease operations while they search for the body?
And Minister, just before you go any further, I understand that the bells have started. Is there a will of the committee to continue for 20 minutes into the bells before we adjourn?
There seems to be consent around the table, sir.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll continue until 10 minutes before the vote. Thank you very much. Please resume, Minister.
It's devastating to, having spoken to the family of one of the victims, that they are having to search the trash for the mother. No one should have to do that, and no one should be treated like trash in this country. And in this case, it's taken on a very literal meaning. This is a space that now has, we know, as far as what we've been told, human remains, and I think it needs to be treated accordingly. There are a number of facts that I still don't have, that I need to get to the bottom of before. I absolutely support these women in finding their mother and in honoring her, should there not be the ability to find the actual remains. And that I think is the work that we'll have to do. I'm in communication with the Mayor of Winnipeg, and in communication with other folks to make sure that these women are heard, are treated with dignity and respect in a very, very difficult time. This is a site that has had successive deposits of refuse since July, when they appeared to know that there were bodies there. So I don't discount the complexities of it, but we do need to make sure in this country that we aren't treating people like trash. If there is a way to search, I think that the efforts should be deployed. If that can't be done, we need to find a way to properly honor them. These are evolving conversations with the families. They may reinforce their perspective or change it, and I just want to respect that space while that final determination is made. I left the conversation with the family yesterday with a lot more questions than I thought I had in the first place. So I'm still questioning a lot of things, and I think we should, as a country, when this happens, because too long, Indigenous people, when they go missing and turn out to be murdered, are not treated the same way as other people.
Do I have time? 20 seconds.
Mr. Vidal or Mr. Schmale for 5 minutes?
Zimmer, actually.
Oh, Mr. Zimmer, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
Please go ahead for 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister Miller, for appearing today. Just, I'll get right to it. Question about its line in page 244 of the estimates. It's funding for the settlement of Blueberry River, Doig River, Halfway River, and West Moberly First Nations Treaty 8 land entitlement specific claims of $673 million. I won't get into the smaller numbers. And just wanted to know, can you give me a breakdown of how much funding will be going to each community?
Not sure. This is a settlement that is obviously for people you represent federally. Yeah. It's a game changer for them. It's the government paying its bills, so it's very important. I don't have the breakdown per community.
I really don't want to interrupt. I wanted to know more specifics around it, and
if that's publicly available, we could disclose that to you. But I don't have it. If the team has it, they should feel free to disclose it. If they can't, we could tell you why.
Because I have questions about the breakdown too, about how like each community, and then even those breakdowns, where is that money going? Because I do represent those communities and the residents that reside there.
Okay, sure.
And I think what they're asking about is, just a question that I would share with many of them. How many of these dollars go to administrative costs? How many are legal fees? How much is actually landing in these communities as it's meant to?
So I can give you the general breakdowns.
Sure.
And I don't have the rest on the legal fees and such.
That's fine.
The Blueberry River, $252.6 million. Doig River, $235.5 million. And with respect to Halfway River and West Moberly First Nations, it is divided equally between the two.
So you said you didn't have any specific about whether it went to administrative fees or it's going to administrative fees, etc. Now, without that specificity, can you at least break it down topically? Where's that money going?
But the vast majority of it is compensation for the claim that we resolved.
So is it earmarked, though? Is a certain amount to legal fees or administrative fees and a certain amount that goes to actual band members, or is it not that specific?
So the communities typically, and I'll speak generally because this is their decision as to how they distribute it, when they do these ratification votes, they will have a scheme and proposal according to which they'll deliver. Obviously, people want to see results on the ground, so usually there's a distribution. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and then there is reserve for final, throughout whatever trust mechanism that they have for future investments.
Well, and that's maybe my last question, but it kind of begs a few more. Are there any mechanisms put in place by these communities to monitor how these funds will be spent?
They have their own governance systems, and we respect that.
Okay. Because it brings up this question, and we've had different discussions about different First Nations communities in my area, and how at times the government is standoffish when they're being called upon to help and to assist and to really govern, as what the job of the federal government is to do. It's in cooperation with the local First Nation, and there's been this standoffish approach, even though they've been looking for help and looking for answers, and we know personal examples that I brought to you, and the government has said, look, we're not going to get involved. And so it brings up the concern about this as well. And I guess from community members' perspective, they want to see that this is done responsibly and that it'll actually land in the places that it means to land. And I guess the assurance of that, I'm not getting any kind of new assurance that there's a mechanism in place that it will be done that way, that'll be kind of with a light shone on clarity on how that money is going to be spent in the communities.
So I think you'll agree with me that being representative of the government that was sued, we shouldn't then dictate the terms upon which the compensation was, which we wouldn't do with respect to any community that you represent. We do have to tread a very fine line. The Indian Act is very heavy-handed, and people like me in the past have intervened too aggressively with devastating social repercussions, sometimes with evil intentions, sometimes with other intentions. And so that's the arena that we're in.
Yeah. I think all
the issue is really to trust communities.
All communities are asking for some accountability of where the money is. There's this money that's been allocated that will be, it's been accountably accounted for. And that's
Excuse me to interrupt. There's about 10 seconds left.
Okay.
A quick answer, and we'll go to Mr.
No, I
Baptiste
appreciate
after.
that, and I just I think that's what the will of the community is, and just would hope that there would be an accountability in how this is done.
Yeah, everyone loves accountability. I'm going to go celebrate this with them because it's long overdue, and it's very important. Obviously, you want to see results hit the ground. And I know we've had separate discussions on this, and my role as the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and my prior role as Indigenous Services Canada, it is a role that I have to play very judiciously, hoping that I'm not intervening in areas where we've been too heavy-handed. So I get your point, but I think at the outset we have to start trusting each other a little better, particularly when we're being the one that's sued and we're the ones that haven't paid the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. Mr. Baptiste for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, I think it's important to reflect on where we are in this country in terms of Indigenous issues. I've been going to the Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly gathering that's happening right now in Ottawa for more than 20 years, first as a Assembly of First Nations Youth Council, then as a proxy, and spent some time as a regional chief. And I remember during the whole time of being a youth council, then being a regional chief, there was only one minister for all Indigenous issues, including all of the things that are ISK related today, that are Crown Indigenous related today, that Northern issues. And we've seen over the past few years a real dedication for our ministers to make themselves visible during these meetings with Assembly of First Nations, and seeing all of the ministers take time to meet with the different caucuses. And I reflect at a time that there was only one minister that had to handle this huge responsibility. And so, Minister Miller, one of the responsibilities that's under Crown Indigenous relations is reconciliation. I think that Canadians really woke up to the realities of the need for reconciliation with the discovery of bodies, children's bodies, in several places, including Kamloops, including Saskatchewan, and we're in the process of getting to the truth of just how many children went missing during their residential schools. And I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the progress that we're making on the reconciliation file, especially with the calls to action around the burial ground 72 to 76, I believe. And you could talk to us about some of the money that we've put out from coast to coast around getting to the truth and helping Indigenous families and communities find closure, but also helping them reconcile with the dark history of Canada.
Thank you, MP Batista. It just come to my attention as well, and MP Idla would appreciate hearing this. Indeed, all members would. That my understanding is that the operations at the site in question, at the dump site, have been paused by the mayor and Premier Stevenson. So this is good news. I believe this is what family's been asking for, and so that is positive news. And we'll see what happens next.
I've got limited time for that,
I'm good.
to get that question.
I know I take too long in my answers, MP Batiste. There are about 96 projects that are underway across the country to search those former sites. I've had the opportunity over the last year or so to visit. It's now up 20-some sites across the country. Each has unique stories and survivors that have suffered unspeakable horrors, some speaking for the first time and some still suffering in silence. In that space we still have to recognize and honor. The reality is this will take years to figure out, and closure comes in many forms. It comes in being able to speak about it. It comes in being able to trace a long-lost loved one. And that means a lot of money and investment from the government of Canada. You tend to think that the radar searches are the things where you see the financial pressure. That isn't the case. They're relatively cost-effective. The real work is working with survivors in communities and having community gatherings and having healing sessions. Obviously, there's going to be long-term infrastructure asks that we will have to work with communities to do, and it isn't every community that wants to do a search. There are traditions and views that we leave the space lying as it is and not to touch anything. There are others that differ wildly from that. And when you talk about a place that kids have been dragged to from different communities with different protocols, you can imagine communities are reeling, trying to figure out what the best protocol is to engage people. So that is time intensive. It is also re-traumatizing, but it goes to that process of accountability and closure that people are trying to figure out. Accountability may very well mean bringing someone to trial. Accountability may mean trying to find out where your loved one was lost so that you stop blaming someone else for their disappearance. And there are specific examples of that have been shared with me in confidence, but each of them are unique, and each of them has to be honored and researched. I would finally highlight, so that I don't take into your second question, that the funding of the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation for the next few years and the investment in a new building is so key to making sure that survivors have a focal point where they can go and consult and get documentation so they can get to that information and perhaps closure that is outside the control and purview of the federal government, that obviously with respect to which they have some healthy mistrust towards still.
Thank you, Minister. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. Madame Gill, vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Mrs. Gill, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you mentioned that for 2030, we will be able to fill this housing gap. That's 8 years away. I know we've often heard it, but in Quebec, $3.9 billion for housing, 120,000 housing units worth $40 million. So right now, we see in Quebec, we're talking about 220 units. But that gives you an idea of what's going on. So we need 1,200 units per year. So the funding up until 2030, if you multiply it by 5, it's justly for the shortcoming. I'm not talking about inflation or other supplemental housing that we will need. I know that this is a complex issue, but can we say here that despite the money that's being invested, we will simply not be able to reach this objective by 2030? Obviously, there are challenges, and the work that we've done to date, well, we're trying to deal with this housing shortcoming. This is something that is horrendous. It's enormous. And regardless of inflation, it's going to take billions of dollars. We're aiming to resolve this issue by 2030, but this is something that each government, regardless of political stripe, will have to invest in. And obviously, does that mean that your government may be increasing funds because of this shortcoming? I'm talking about housing per se. Does that mean that you will be increasing this amount? Because if you multiply this by 5, we can see that this shortcoming will get bigger and bigger over the next few years. And I can't talk about the next budget, obviously, but the reality is that we're going to have to deal with this issue. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gill.
2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Food insecurity is a major issue. And I see that Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada is requesting $87.3 million to support food security in the North. What are your two departments going to do to make sure that these funds don't just go into the pockets of for-profit corporations who are showing record profits, and that it actually goes into the mouths of people that need to be fed by this program?
It's really an excellent question, and you probably heard Minister Vandel's answer on Nutrition North, as well as some of the supports through COVID that has really supported country food. I saw some amazing stuff going on in Inuvialuit, in particular over the summer, to keep people safe and get them good, nutritious food. I don't think we should be afraid to speak about this publicly, that we need to have a rethink about and perhaps means testing some of the investments that we're doing to keep healthy and nutritious food going into the North, and in particular the far North. I don't have the answers to that just yet. I think it's going to take a lot of work with rights holders to come up with a plan that is a little smarter than Nutrition North. Nutrition North works in different ways. It certainly needs more money, but the reality is someone making a lot of money can go in and get the same type of rebate that someone that has less means to do so does, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. I'm not launching a revamp from a committee of Nutrition North, but I think we need to give some thought into that, because it isn't working at the height of which it needs to work in order to keep people properly fed.
I've been asking questions about how this program is monitored and evaluated, and it seems that the way that it is that the for-profit corporations are monitoring themselves. And what will this government do to make sure that this practice of themselves monitoring this program stops, so that it's the government that's monitoring the program?
So the Deputy Minister knows a bit more about the advisory committee related to Nutrition North. It would probably be helpful to have him answer it.
And thank you for the question. And yes, there is an advisory committee that is all relevant players. In fact, most of the major changes that we did recently were at the suggestion of ITK and NTI. And so as we work with those external players, they're the ones, for example, who recommended the Harvesters Grant. And they're the ones who'd made the recommendations on the Bannock list. And so they're very much at the core of who's driving an awful lot of the conversation about the program.
That still doesn't answer my question about how the monitoring of those monies from those profit corporations is working. Nobody's monitoring the corporations, how they are using that Nutrition North, and that's what I was asking. How will this government monitor it so that it's not the for-profit corporation that's monitoring the use of these $87 million?
Very quickly, if you want to comment on that. Otherwise, we'll have to stop.
There is a robust monitoring process in place that involves a number of parties, not just the companies themselves.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll bring our panel to a close. Thank you very much, Minister Miller, for appearing with your team today to answer questions in the context of Supplementary Estimates B. With that, we bring it to a close. Just before I ask for adjournment, I would like to say that on Monday, colleagues will be starting our study of the Indigenous Languages Act. And with that, I'd like to request that we adjourn.